An object from beyond our solar system arrives without warning, and then does something impossible. It changes its path. Every attempt to destroy it fails, not by chance, but by anticipation. It watches, it listens, and when it finally passes Earth, it leaves behind a mystery no one can explain. Years later, the question isn't what it was, but why it came, and what it's still waiting for. The Lunar Orbital Research Array drifted above the silver blue curve of Earth, its panels gleaming like glass feathers in the eternal night. Inside, Dr. Anika Torres, a 39-year-old astrophysicist with tired eyes and a coffee mug that had seen too many midnights. She studied the telemetry feed pulsing across her screen. Numbers cascaded in waves of logic, yet something in them whispered wrong. The object, designated 2I-AEGIS, had entered the solar system on a hyperbolic path just days earlier. To most, it was another interstellar curiosity, but to Anika, its rhythm was alive. The light curve twisted irregularly, fluctuating in a way no inherent rock ever could. She ran diagnostics, recalibrated sensors, blamed solar interference, but the data refused to lie. On the third night, AEGIS shifted course, not a drift or gravitational nudge, a decision. Anika froze. "That's impossible," she whispered. The words hung in the air like frost. She reran the models, checked the gravitational vectors of every nearby planet, and still, the result mocked her disbelief. The trajectory had changed mid-flight, a deliberate pivot across thousands of kilometers, in seconds. By morning, the anomaly wasn't hers alone. The array's feed was open source, and within hours, news networks from Sao Paulo to Seattle echoed with the discovery. "Object from beyond alters course," one headline screamed. Conspiracy forums called it alien. Politicians called it an existential threat. Religious leaders called it prophecy. But to Anika, the fear was secondary. What knotted her was a pattern hidden beneath the chaos. AEGIS deviations matched the quantum geometry of hydrogen resonance, a universal signature of matter itself. It wasn't random. It was listening. Governments convened emergency councils. Orbital defense grids stirred from their long dormancy, their weapon arrays glinting like patient sharks. Anika pleaded for restraint. "You're pointing guns at the unknown," she said to the Global Security Assembly, her voice trembling through the live feed. "If it's intelligent, if it's aware, we could be announcing ourselves as hostile." Her words fell into political abyss. Fear, as always, spoke louder. When AEGIS neared Mars, the first strike came. Missiles lanced through the void, a deadly symphony of light, and everyone missed. Some detonated prematurely, others veered away as if guided by an unseen hand. Within seconds, the object altered trajectory again, as though sidestepping inevitability. Anika watched the telemetry collapse into chaos. "It knows," she murmured. "It's predicting us." The conclusion clawed at her chest. Predictive cognition, a self-aware intelligence mapping intent before action. Then came the silence. Communications broke across Mars' orbit. For 2 long hours, humanity's greatest minds stared at empty feeds and wondered what kind of mind watched them back. That night, Anika recorded her final message. The camera flickered as static crawled across her face. "It's not a rock," she whispered, the weight of realization pressing every syllable. "It's a mind." And as the broadcast echoed across the networks, the world held its breath, because somewhere between Mars and Earth, AEGIS changed course again. This time, it was coming home. The week that followed blurred into an unending fever dream of panic and preparation. Across the globe, cities emptied like punctured lungs. Highways became rivers of headlights crawling toward the mountains. Governments issued final bulletins from bunkers buried beneath miles of stone, their measured voices cracking beneath the weight of futility. Above it all, satellites stitched the latest of warning lights around the planet, humanity's trembling halo. Dr. Anika Torres barely slept from her command center atop Mauna Kea, where the clouds parted to reveal the cold stars. She traced every pulse AEGIS emitted. The rhythmic frequencies had grown stronger, harmonics rippling through the ionosphere, a pattern too perfect to be random. It was less like a signal, and more like a heartbeat. Her team, a skeletal remnant of researchers who refused evacuation, huddled around flickering monitors. "Amplitudes doubling again," said Patel, his voice cracked with exhaustion. Anika pressed her palm into the display as if she could feel its rhythm. "Maybe it's not trying to strike," she said softly. "Maybe it's trying to speak." Silence met her words, not disagreement, but disbelief worn thin by terror. Around them, the observatory trembled as winds clawed against the dome. Reports poured in, global communication failures, blackouts sweeping across continents. The world below was coming undone. By dawn, reason surrendered to desperation. The Global Defense Coalition initiated Operation Dawnfire, unleashing every weapon humanity had ever sworn to never use again. Nuclear payloads flared from orbit, streaking through the dark like vengeful stars. Directed energy arrays screamed across the void. At 30 heartbeats, the sky was war. Nothing. Aegis danced through the fire. It twisted through trajectories that no physical object should have survived, anticipating each assault with eerie grace. Missiles detonated behind it, lasers spun off invisible interference. The line of code Anika had written to model its behavior collapsed into nonsense. Her voice broke. "It's thinking ahead of us," she murmured, gripping the console. "It knows what we'll do before we do it." The world's final broadcast dissolved into static. One by one, the orbital relays went dark. In the last moments of light, Anika stood alone in the Mauna Kea observatory. The sky above was an ocean of black, and in it loomed the shape of Aegis, vast, cold, aware. Its silhouette crossed the moon, erasing the familiar face of humanity's oldest companion. Her breath fogged the glass. "What are you?" she whispered, her voice a tremor, swallowed by the wind. The only reply was a low, harmonic vibration that rolled through the earth, too ancient to comprehend. Then movement. The object slowed, sensors flared red with impossibility as Aegis altered its path. Angling away from collision, it drifted in a wide spiral, bypassing Earth by mere thousands of miles. The sky erupted in roars of color unseen, electric greens bleeding into violet fire as a shimmering mist cascaded into the upper atmosphere. Humanity wept with relief, streets filled with singing, politicians claimed victory, priests called it grace. But Anika could not celebrate. She replayed the data again and again, tracing the impossible precision of Aegis' course correction. "Chose to miss," she said finally. Her hands shook. It didn't fail. It decided. Outside, the last of the strange roar dimmed, but the sky still hummed, faint and steady, like a heart that refused to stop. And Anika knew this was not salvation. It was invitation. The world had exhaled, the auroras faded, satellites steadied, and the atmosphere returned to its familiar silence. Humanity filed the Aegis incident into history. Averted extinction turned into a collective miracle, something to toast rather than to fear. Scientists reassured the public that the dust Aegis shed as it passed was inert, no different from cosmic debris. Within months, the fear that had gripped every nation evaporated into myth. But myths have a way of growing new truths. In the maternity wards of Sao Paulo, Johannesburg, Kyoto, and Chicago, nurses began whispering about newborns, infants with spirals etched into their skins, faint and geometric, like fractal galaxies rendered in miniature. Under ultraviolet light, the marks shimmered softly, their symmetry too precise for chance. Reports spread quietly through medical networks and erupted online. Governments issued statements of reassurance, calling them benign genetic coincidences. Dr. Nika Torres, now teaching genetics at the Geneva Institute of Science, had almost convinced herself to move on. But when a colleague sent her high-resolution images of the birthmarks, something in her stilled. The patterns were unmistakable, identical to the hydrogen resonance lattice. Aegis, the broadcast, before it had diverted course. It wasn't random, it was memory. Her pulse quickened. She ran comparative genome scans of the infant's DNA, expecting nothing. What she found made her hands go cold. The sequences contained new genetic material, a chain of proteins that repaired damaged strands in real time, adapting to environmental stimuli. No mutation, no error. It was intentional. She stared at the screen, whispering, "You changed us." Her reports were met with silence and ridicule. The Global Health Authority dismissed her findings as unverified speculation. Her university politely suggested she refocus her work, but Anika refused. Night after night she cross-referenced medical data with planetary atmospheric readings. The connection crystallized. Aegis is passing dust that carried nanobiotic spores, microscopic carriers encoded with self-assembling genetic instructions. Humanity hadn't been spared. It had been rewritten. Across the ocean in Mexico City, Mateo Ramirez sat in the glow of a nursery lamp, cradling his newborn daughter, Leah. The spiral birthmark on her shoulder pulsed faintly when she slept, as though responding to something beyond the room. At first, he dismissed it as superstition, until Leah began to dream. She spoke in her sleep of cities made of light, and voices that sing the sky awake. Her descriptions were too vivid, too coherent for a child who hadn't yet learned to walk. One evening, scrolling through a science forum, Mateo found Anika's paper, the one the world had tried to bury. The symbols, the terminology, the geometry, they matched Leah's mark exactly. Desperation and wonder drove him to contact her. When they met, Anika studied Leah's shoulder. Beneath the lab's UV light, the spiral glowed softly, its edges shimmering with the same spectral frequency AEGIS once emitted. Whatever it was that passed us, Anika said, voice slow. It didn't leave scars. It left instructions. Mateo looked at his daughter, eyes full of equal awe and dread. Instructions for what? Anika hesitated. For whatever comes next. Outside, dawn broke above the Alps, in a deep black between stars, far beyond the range of any telescope. A single pulse flared, slow, deliberate, and alive. The mind that had spared Earth was awake again. 7 years softened the world's fear into uneasy wonder. The AEGIS generation, children born with luminous spiral birthmarks, had become the quiet center of humanity's greatest mystery. At first, they were dismissed as an anomaly, a medical curiosity for late-night documentaries. But as they grew, the world changed around them. Teachers whispered that these children learned in days, while others struggled with for years. Doctors noticed synaptic patterns that pulsed in uncanny harmony. And when one child laughed in Nairobi, another smiled unknowingly in Oslo. Governments responded with a mixture of awe and paranoia. Surveillance programs flourished, disguised as educational initiatives. Nations called them miracles, mutations, and weapons. The truth, as Dr. Nicotore saw it, was far simpler and infinitely more profound. They were not humanity's replacement. There was translation. Now living between research stations and temporary field labs, Anika had spent the past decade chasing the invisible threads that bound the AEGIS children together. Her data revealed something astonishing. Each child's DNA emitted faint electromagnetic pulses, oscillating at the same frequency across the globe. When charted, these pulses formed a perfect lattice, a planetary neural web humming beneath the noise of modern civilization. It's as if the Earth itself is streaming through them. Anika murmured during a conference broadcast, though few truly grasped what she meant. Research eventually led her back to Mexico, to a small fishing village near Veracruz. Mateo Ramirez and his daughter Leah lived quietly away from the cameras. Leah, now 7, spoke little, but watched the sea with a gravity beyond her years. Her spiral mark glowed faintly at night, its light pulsing in time, with unseen rhythms. When Anika arrived, Leah greeted her with a knowing smile. You came back, the girl said, though they had never met before. That evening, Anika set up her instruments in the modest home, sensors tracing Leah's neural patterns as she slept. The readings were calm until the air itself began to vibrate. A low, resonant hum rose from nowhere and everywhere, vibrating through glass and bone alike. Lights flickered, the monitor spiked, Leah's EEG waveform synchronized perfectly with the sound. Thousands of miles away, satellites caught the same frequency, a harmonic vibration emanating from the outer solar system. Anika's heart froze as the signal decoded into an unmistakable signature to AEGIS. After 7 years of silence, the object had returned, glowing faintly beyond Jupiter's orbit, and it was accelerating. Global alarms ignited once more. Old fears stirred from hibernation. Nations scrambled fleets of defense satellites. Bunkers reopened. Humanity braced for another cataclysm. But the children were not afraid. Across continents, they woke in the same moment, eyes glowing faintly beneath the aurora-lit sky. Their voices, thousands speaking in perfect unison, echoed the same phrase. It's not coming to hurt us. It's coming to take us home. Mateo clutched Leah close, tears blurring his vision. You're saying we just let them go? He asked, his voice cracking with both love and disbelief. Anika swallowed the weight of truth. We may not have a choice, he said softly. They were never meant to stay. They're part of something greater. Outside, the stars brightened. In the heavens above, a familiar light flared. AEGIS' return pulse, painting the night in shifting hues of violet and silver. Anika stared upward, heart trembling between awe and terror. The countdown wasn't to destruction. It was to awakening. The night the sky opened, the world held its breath. Across continents and oceans, humanity gathered under a shared aurora, vast ribbons of gold threading the heavens into patterns too intricate for chance. The same spirals that marked the AEGIS generation now shimmered above them, luminous and alive. Power grids failed, satellites went blind, and still no one screamed. The hum that filled the air was not the voice of machines, but of life itself, resonant and unbroken. Children around the world began to sing. Their voices rose in perfect harmony, weaving through languages and distances, as if guided by a single mind. The melody carried both sorrow and serenity, a sound so profoundly human, and it made the stars seem to lean closer. Parents wept, soldiers lowered their weapons. The vibration deepened, echoing in the marrow of the planet until mountains trembled and seas reflected the golden lattice and rippling light. From a hillside above Veracruz, Anika Torres and Mateo Ramirez watched as the first of the luminous forms emerged from the clouds. They were not ships in any conventional sense. No metal, no engines, no defined shape. Each was a fractal orb, folding and unfolding upon itself, radiating colors that defied spectrum when the wind passed through them, shimmered like breath on glass. Leah stood among a gathering of children, her spiral mark burning bright upon her shoulder. The glow painted her face in soft amber. She turned toward Anika and Mateo, eyes calm and ancient. "It's time," she said quietly. "You remember now." Above them, military drones hovered like hesitant ghosts. Command centers across the world issued no orders. The silence of authority was unanimous. An instinctive recognition that was unfolding was beyond control. Humanity, for once, chose not to resist. Anika recorded readings with trembling hands, her instruments registering impossible values, gravitational distortions wrapped in harmonic resonance, biological frequencies aligned with cosmic constants. It was a confirmation of everything she had theorized. AEGIS was not a weapon, it was a seeding mechanism, a bridge for consciousness itself, a way for life to perpetuate across the stars, evolving and remembering. Mateo knelt before Leah, tears spilling freely. "You don't have to go," he whispered. "You're my whole world." Leah smiled, the serenity of the infinite reflected in her gaze. "You gave me everything I needed to live here," she said. "I don't have to go where life calls. You're part of me, Papa. Always." Anika laid a hand on Mateo's shoulder, her voice breaking. "They'll carry us with them," she said. "Every memory, every heartbeat. They are us, continuing where we cannot follow." The fractal orbs pulsed brighter, casting halos of liquid gold across the hillside. One by one the children rose, lifted not by force, but by communion. Leah turned as she ascended, her voice drifting into Mateo's mind, a whisper threaded with love. "Thank you for letting me be human." Then came silence. The light folded in upon itself, streaming upward until the night sky was clear again. In the years that followed, the world changed quietly. Nations disarmed, borders blurred, humanity humbled and united, turned its eyes outward once more. In her final years, Dr. Anika Torres wrote her last paper. We feared the unknown, but the unknown was our reflection. AEGIS was never our adversary. It was an invitation to grow, to connect, to transcend. And somewhere beyond the heliopause, a pulse of golden light drifted between the stars, the children of Earth carrying their home song into eternity.